What's up, fantasy managers? My name's Tom, and I'm back talking about F1 Fantasy. This is my team selection video for race week 6 in Miami, the scene of Lando Norris's maiden F1 victory here last year. In this video, I'll be discussing my team selection for Miami, thinking about track and weather and budget building, points potential, all that good stuff. Chuck it all in the mix, and we'll see what team I come up with, basically. So yeah, join me for continuing the journey of trying to claw back the disaster of Australia in race week 1. That's basically what this entire season's been so far, is trying to get back onto a kind of level playing field after calamity of race week 1. So let's push on and see where Miami's going to take us. So here we are, we got the track info up for Miami, and it's one of those tracks which, I can't lie, I'm not going to feign excitement about this one. Last year was pretty exciting because, it was Lando Norris's first win, and it was like, yeah, quite an exciting thing. It's always exciting getting a new race winner in F1. But that said, the track itself is a bit of a amalgamation of different parts of other racetracks as far as I can see. We got a couple of long straights, a couple of fast sections, a couple of slow sections. It's kind of a bit, I don't know. I don't want to like be too negative, but it's a bit of a mishmash and a bit meh. It's not the most exciting track in the world, but it's what it is. It is a street circuit. It is, of course, a sprint weekend as well, so we've got to factor that into our thoughts, particularly when thinking about potential things like Limitless, that sort of thing, or even no negative with the threat of rain in the air, who knows. In terms of, we've only had like 3 years of racing here, so in terms of the VSC safety car, it's come out in 2 of those 3 races. We've had 3 DNFs on the first race that we had here 3 years ago, then we had nothing, and then last year another 3 DNFs again. I think Lando Norris has done like 2 of those 6 entire DNFs as well, which is kind of funny. Although maybe not entirely his fault, but there we go. In terms of overtakes, pretty good. Gets the green rating. It's 8th on the 8th across all the tracks over the past 3 years of this iteration of car. That means we're going to see, in terms of Limitless, there's been a lot of chit chat about the delta, the differential between how the lower ranked drivers are going to score, where they get they get a lot of points for overtakes, and where the bigger teams are going to score. That's why some people went for Limitless, for example, in Saudi Arabia, worked out well, because there wasn't so many overtakes. There are going to be more overtakes in Miami, so that might be a bit of a cross in the box against Limitless this weekend, but I'm still open to it. In terms of the weather, there is this threat of rain. It keeps him to fluctuating in terms of percentage chance of rain every time I look, and whichever website you look at, it's always hard to tell exactly. And we are still only on Wednesday as of the time of the recording this, so we'll obviously look a bit more closer at when it actually gets to the weekend before the deadline, so we can make the most informed decision. But just be aware, there is a little bit of rain in the air, particularly for the race on Sunday, where obviously the big points are handed out, and well, it doesn't matter if it's Saturday or Sunday, you're still going to get -20 if you slide off into the barriers in the rain. So yeah, just something to bear in mind, I would say. So let's have a look put all these things together and have a think about how this is going to affect team selection. So coming out of Saudi Arabia, this is my team, and I like quite a few others, went down the Pierre Gasly route, and I still stand by that decision. I still think it was a fine decision. I do think if he didn't get a random DNF, which was completely unpredictable, then he would have scored probably at least as well as Ocon, who I switched him out for, or even better, and stood a good chance of a price gain going forward. But obviously, he did get that DNF right on the lap 1, so it's like, boom, -20 in the bag, lap 1. Thanks very much, developers. Here we go again. Thankfully, avoided further DNFs, but yeah, so Gasly is obviously straight away on the chopping block because of the way the budget thing works. Also brought in Bortoletto, very unexciting and fairly uninspiring transfer, but he's literally there to stop losing budget, doing out, Bortoletto in, and he's going to sit there for a little while, I would imagine. And everyone else kind of did okay, so kind of scored okay, moved very slightly up in the rankings. But let's slide along to the team this weekend, and this is where we stand at the moment. So we're going to have this is the team for me. Obviously, other people have got different teams. People will be sat here with Hazards and Racing Bulls and Alpines and all sorts of going on in the constructors lot. I'm just going to talk about my team initially because that's where my thoughts are, and then we'll discuss about other options. So we're going to throw over, first of all, to the Budget Builder, which is like our little Bible for this season. Thank you, F1 Fantasy Tools. And of course, we're sorting it by the most important thing down here. Who's going to get these positive points? So obviously, for me, it's just a no-brainer that Behrman and Hadjar are holds because they have a great chance of going up in price. Behrman can come away with -4 and still go up 0.2. It's quite easy for Behrman to easily get the maximum rise. So Behrman's going nowhere. If he's not on your team, get him in. Hadjar, similar sort of story, only needs 3 points or 8 points for maximum rise. It's slim pickings, it's very slim pickings in this region for these budget drivers. Very slim pickings at the moment, which is I guess a reason to bring in Bortoleto, and why kind of justifies why a lot of us bought him in last week, because he can just sit there whilst it's dry at the moment with these guys not really scoring many points or not got much chance of gaining budget. Bortoleto is just that safe option, so I wouldn't say I'm happy to own him, but I am quite happy because of the budget situation. So don't anticipate him to score many points. If he just picks up a point or two and just doesn't DNF, he's doing his job because he's there as the plug on the budget. Past that, the I guess 3 options really. Ocon is potentially to come back in. He's got this good score from round 4, reasonable round 5. If he does okay in the sprint weekend in Miami, then he should score well as well. But he is getting to that realm where, 9.1 million he's at now. It starts getting harder and harder for him, as we see, like, for example, Albon. It's starting to get hard. Even though Albon's scoring really well, it's hard for him to actually make these budget gains. So Ocon's getting closer and closer to, like 10 million. And at that point, the points per million required is quite difficult for drivers down here. So although he's done phenomenally well so far this season, I think he's going to sort of dry up over the next couple of races, and so I'm not particularly excited about bringing Ocon on, particularly as my current thinking is I might go Limitless in Miami, but I might also hold off for Imola, and I might just hold it further down the line. There's absolutely no guarantee I'm going to use it in the next couple of races, but I'm definitely strongly thinking about it, and if I want to give myself that option, if I do want to go Limitless, then I want to make sure I got the best underlying budget drivers possible, and Ocon, being at that heavy price tag, is probably not going back down that route. So for me, the only obvious picks really are Alonso and Lawson. Lawson's certainly appealing. I mean, they're both appealing. You're not going to get Alonso much cheaper than 6.2 throughout the season. He only dropped 0.2 last race, I believe. So he's already sort of drying up on the points drop him, and he's doing badly because he started off with like 2 DNFs in the first couple of race weeks, but he is a solid, experienced driver. Obviously, it's Alonso. So going forward, I think he's not going to get much cheaper. He stands a good chance, as long as he doesn't DNF, to go up at least 0.2, maybe squeeze a 0.6 rise out of Miami. So yeah, I think Alonso's definitely appealing. So, as is Alonso, as is Lawson. They're similar sort of price, and Lawson's got a couple of good scores here to go off the back, and it's quite easy for him to rise. If we have a quick look at pop over to the statistics page, we can see that Lawson's doing pretty well in the category that we kind of want him to do well. So if we have a look at, we won't look at sprint because he doesn't count because he raced for Red Bull in the China sprints. We'll just look at overtakes, for race overtakes. Save that. We can see Lawson's doing all right. Obviously, round 3, nothing really happened, but then it was Japan. No one really got any overtakes, so going to take that with a bit of a pinch of salt. Lawson down here, just no overtakes. But then we move into Bahrain, and we see Lawson doing pretty well. 13 was the most, and that come from, well, 2 of the top end drivers in Antonelli and the Mercedes, and Hamilton and the Ferrari. So we'd expect them to kind of claw positions from through after poor qualifying. And yeah, but Lawson is right there, as well as round 5, not doing too bad either in 4 positions. So Lawson's already showing some overtake potential. If we go back as well, have a look in 2024, if I just sing a song whilst this loads, there we go. So if we rate it, we've already got it on overtakes, haven't we? So yeah, if we rank it by overtakes, I know again Lawson only had 6 races at the end of last season, so it's a small sample size, but he's 5th here, and if you take away all the guys above like Behrman, Doohan and Behrman again, who only race 1 or 2 races, so even smaller sample size and less reliable average, slice them off, and then you've got Magnussen, who's like the lead here at 5.2, and equal to that is Lawson. So yeah, Lawson's definitely shown some capability of doing some overtakes, so I'm quite happy to have that potential in my team, compared to Alonso. Not doing so hot down here at 3.3, but obviously bigger sample size and everything. You also got to think about the car, where it's going to qualify. Alonso, pretty good at qualifying, so more susceptible perhaps to positions lost as well, whereas Lawson can be good at qualifying, but not always like right up there. Hadjar seems to have the edge at the moment. So yeah, maybe Lawson is just a good pick for potential positions gained as well as overtakes, at least in the small sort of sample sizes that we've seen. That's kind of what I'm looking at. So looking at the team, like I say, Gasly, he just has to go. If I'm not going Limitless, I could go Limitless. We'll discuss that a bit more detail in just a second. But if I'm not going Limitless, then Gasly just has to go because of the way the budget is. I can't just sit here and just suck up another 0.6 loss and probably another 0.6 loss after that unless he has a phenomenal sprint weekend. It's a shame. It is a real shame. Like, this is the downside to the budget pricing this year. There are some positives about it, but it definitely needs some improvement in my opinion. But the fact that, I do think that Gasly and Alpine should score, providing there's no more random DNFs, Gasly should score well this weekend, and therefore it would be nice to have him in the team. But I just can't accept losing the 0.6. It's too important at this stage of the season. So Gasly just kind of has to go to the chopping block. And as we've just discussed, it's pretty much Alonso versus Lawson. At the moment, I'd say I'm probably slightly leaning towards Lawson. He needs it's a fraction easier for him to gain price. And yeah, I just have a bit of a better feeling about Lawson, but I wouldn't fault anyone for going Alonso. Like I say, it's nice and cheap. He is fractionally cheaper, 0.4 million cheaper. So Alonso's a fine option. Like I say, Behrman, Hadjar, Bortoletto not really going anywhere unless something weird happens and they can't take part in the sprint and we're going to get minus 20 or whatever, then so be it. In terms of the big guns, we obviously got Piastri in here who's just going nowhere. I've said it all season. He's just phenomenal. He's great. He's in great form. He's in the best car. Norris is making a couple of mistakes here and there. Piastri is just grinding out, victories basically, at the very least podiums, whilst Norris is, not quite there. I expect Norris to come back and do well. He's probably got good memories from here last season. So I anticipate Norris to come back strongly again this weekend, and that's why I'm also kind of happy to just hold the McLaren constructor, because I still think they're the best. And, we're not seeing any upgrades coming in, not any big upgrades until the following race in Imola. And then maybe some more, a couple of races after that, and then it could all change from Spain onwards, as we all know. But for the time being, McLaren's are great. I'm happy to just hold them both in there. Then the final slot for me is Mercedes, and again, I'm very happy to just hold if they look strong, if they're doing all right in FP1 and look like they're competitive in sprint qualifying. There is some thought in my mind, particularly because I've got enough budget, just about going Lawson. To bring in the Ferraris, and I think that's also a fine option because they're really great for pit stop points, as we know. They're doing fine in terms of the race points, but the fact that they are getting just massive points from, if we just throw it back here, massive points from the pit stops. I think most of you have probably already seen this anyway, but we'll just have a look anyway. Scroll it down to pit stop, save that. Scroll down to the constructors. We can see the Ferraris are just exceptional, and I think it was Saudi Arabia where they got like a 2.0 something pit stop, and if they were like a tenth of a second quicker, they would have got an extra 10 points for being sub 2 seconds. That's going to happen. Like the form their pit crew is in, they're probably going to get like a sub 2 second, potentially even world record. Who knows? Not very likely, but there is definitely that potential, more so than any other team at the moment. So yeah, definitely the pit stops for Ferrari, in combination with the fact that they kind of look okay. They look competitive and compete with the Mercedes, particularly. They look particularly good in Saudi Arabia compared to the Mercedes. We're quicker than them. We might see a similar sort of thing in these warmer conditions, perhaps in Miami. So it's going to be nice and warm again. And then we've also got Imola, where I believe Ferrari and Mercedes might be bringing in upgrades in Imola, from what I've read so far. So it'd be interesting to know what's going on there. But yeah, just having Ferrari in there preemptively, and there's no concerns about the price gains and everything. That should still just get 0.3. Hamilton's obviously not super comfortable. It's been well documented. Hamilton's not that comfortable, but he's still doing fine. He's still doing okay. And like I say, with if I want to go limitless in Imola, then having Ferrari in here preemptively for the budget gain also could be a fine thing, particularly if the upgrades do shoot them up. We'll have the 3 practice sessions to see how good the upgrades are potentially in Imola, and then decide if we want to go limitless or not. And obviously, we want the underlying team to be as good as possible, even though it doesn't matter too much with the constructors because they're likely to go up 0.3 anyway. But yeah, for me, let's talk about limitless then, I guess, because it's kind of on people's minds. Let's just do it in order. Do I want to do limitless in Miami? At the moment, I'm kind of like, meh, I could do it, but one, I've got Gasly sat on my team at the moment. I don't really want to just sit here and take a near 0.6 loss. Although if it looks like ideal, for example, McLaren's, Ferraris or Mercedes, because those are probably the 3 big teams at the moment. Red Bull, not so much for me around this track perhaps, but they could still have potential, particularly if it's wet and Verstappen's great and they're wet, etc., etc. But in general, I'm looking more at for limitless, like McLaren, Ferrari, Mercedes, probably. And that doesn't excite me straight off the bat because I think a lot of non-limitless teams will be running them anyway. But if we see, like, for example, the Ferraris qualify a bit further back and there's good overtake potential in this track, then that could be quite good points for that. But then, I don't know, it's tough because I don't think there's going to be that many points in, say Ferrari's qualify like 7th and 8th, whatever. It's like, they can move forward, great. It's like, yeah, they're probably going to get an extra 5 or 6 points or something. It's like, it's not that exciting. I'd probably rather have, probably with the whole Delta thing, for example, in Imola, where there's fewer overtakes, therefore fewer points potential for the back markers, therefore bigger points gain, effective points gained by the big teams. Probably better to have that in Imola, where we've got FP1, FP2, FP3, and they can see with a higher degree of certainty, like people used in Saudi Arabia, to see who the best 5 picks are. The reason I didn't really go for it in Saudi Arabia is because I wasn't really sure about the second constructor, and maybe that'll still be the same in Imola, particularly with upgrades coming in, so it might still be a bit of a question mark, and I want to be more certain. Sometimes maybe we just want to take a risk, take a gamble, and just kind of go for it. That's what kind of paid off quite handsomely for a lot of people in Saudi Arabia, so maybe that's what I want to do in Imola. But yeah, for me personally, I'm probably not going Limitless in Miami because I've got Gasly. If I didn't have Gasly, if I sat here with like a Lawson or something and my team looks like this, I'd be a lot more willing to go for that Limitless team. Should I be letting 0.6 million factor in, what is probably the most powerful chip that we have this season? Am I being a bit, have I got the blinkers on and it's like, oh, Tom, stop worrying about the 0.6 million, just use Limitless because it's a great opportunity to use it. It's like, yeah, if it looks good for FP1 and sprint qualifying, then yeah, fine, I agree. I'll just kind of suck up the 0.6 loss and maybe just hold Gasly kind of going forward and just kind of accept that I've lost a bit of budget, but I've scored a bunch of points. But it's not ideal, obviously. It's not ideal, which is why I'm thinking, like, hold it, just get rid of Gasly, bring in someone that's probably going to gain some price, and then potentially use Limitless in Imola, because like I say, fewer overtakes and that, but it's not impossible. Some people talked about Monaco, but I don't like Monaco so much because if your drivers do qualify badly, your Limitless drivers qualify badly in Monaco, they're just stuck. It doesn't matter how good their car is, they're just stuck. They're very, very hard to overtake. Therefore, Monaco really puts me off using Limitless. So for me, still potential for using it in Miami, but not a strong potential at the moment on this Wednesday evening that I'm recording. A pretty strong potential for using it in Imola. Keep an eye on the weather and everything, and keep an eye on the upgrades, etc. But yeah, there's definitely a strong potential I use in Imola. Almost certainly not going to use it in Monaco, and then past that, I'm still very open to just leaving it further down the season. It's not the end of the world if we don't use it early. Yeah, it's optimal, blah blah blah, to use it early on the season because it gives you a bit better differential, etc. I think we've still got time. And it's not the end of the world if if someone down the line someone's got like, instead of a Behrman in here, they've got like a Russell or an Antonelli or whatever, and it's like, oh, your Limitless is less effective because look, these people can afford big constructors and 2 big drivers. That's the whole reason people want to go Limitless early on in the season. But to be fair, what's Antonelli going to score over someone like a Behrman at the moment? Like an extra 10, 15 points. Yeah, obviously that's nice, and that's the kind of the reason why people are using Limitless early as possible. But it's not the end of the world. 10, 15 points, that's less than a random DNF. So I'm more than happy. If it doesn't feel right, if it doesn't look right, I'm not confident, I'm happy to just hold it Limitless. I'm not going to rush and just use it for the sake of it because it's early in the season. So I'd urge a bit of patience, a bit of caution, but obviously use it if it feels right early on in the season, but don't go crazy, basically. So those are kind of my thoughts on Limitless. Other chips, the only other chip I'd probably consider this weekend, I have sort of thought about it, but as the threat of rain seems to be reducing from what, again, it's kind of up in the air because it's, well, literally up in the air, isn't it? That's where rain comes from. But it's kind of a bit unknown as to how much rain we're going to get. So if the forecast changes and there's more heavy rain forecast, and no negative on the sprint weekend looks great. We obviously saw what happened in Brazil last year. I don't think we're going to get the same thing, even if it does rain in Miami. I don't think it's going to be that severe by the looks of it. And it's not, I know we've only had 3 years of racing here, but it's not had like masses of DNFs, unlike Brazil, which is, tight, twisty and whatnot. So yeah, no negative is definitely like on the radar, but at the moment, quite a low percentage chance that I play it, but it's just, something to bear in mind, I guess. So the last thing I'm just going to talk about briefly is there might be a few teams that are sat on something similar to this. You might have something else other than Haas, but I'm just going to use Haas as an example because I think they're probably the most popular amongst you guys. So the reason why I personally don't like this team for a couple of reasons, basically. First of all, it's a sprint weekend, and the bigger teams are going to score big. Providing there's no random disqualifications, DNFs, or whatever, we can't really account for that. Someone like a Mercedes or Ferrari is going to massively outscore Haas on an average weekend. So I don't like that for that reason. Second of all, the way, if we flick over to the budget builder again, we look at these top A tier drivers, it's really hard for them to gain price. So Russell, I know it's a sprint weekend, but that's a bit of a stretch for any of these guys really to get that many points. I think it's definitely possible, but more likely just to get a 0.1 rise, to be honest. And therefore, if they're only going to get a 0.1 and you're more likely to get like a 0.2 here, then you're making a fraction of a loss on an additional B tier driver instead of your A tier. And that is basically not worth the extra 0.6 you're getting from the Haas. So the Haas is getting 0.3 more than a Mercedes, for example, but then you're dropping like a point, more likely 0.1. So you're only really getting 0.2. So you're effectively gaining 0.2, if this makes any sense. It does in my head, so hopefully it makes sense to you. You're effectively gaining like a 0.2 on average from Haas for, on average, just way fewer points. So I just don't like it, personally. I don't think it's a bad idea. I think there's potential there. I personally am not going there. I moved away from that build already, a good 2-3 races ago, whenever it was. And I'm more than happy to sit on these big constructors. They're just much more consistent for these price gains, and I think they're generally less susceptible to DNFs, whereas likes of Haas, surely their luck's going to run out at some point. Hopefully it's not Behrman for me this weekend, or Ocon if I bring him back in, but that's probably not going to happen. So for me personally, if you want to go down this all-in budget building, I still don't think it's great for budget building because the price gains are just not that different. 0.3 to a 0.6, and you got 0.1 to a 0.2. Like, it's all fairly negligible price changes, so it's just, in my opinion, not really worth it. So that's why I'm going to go down this kind of road here. Probably just bring in Lawson, maybe Alonso, and kind of settle on that team. So those are kind of my thoughts going into Miami. Hope you've enjoyed. And then I'll catch you soon for some more fancy thoughts as per usual. So yeah, thanks and bye for now. Bye.